thank you very much for joining this panel. And we have a new member with us, which is Stefan. Welcome, Stefan. You're talking to us, I think, from San Francisco as well as Robert. So
Yes.
the idea of this short panel is like one, getting a short feedback on your presentation, or like a short discussion. We had some questions which couldn't be answered during your presentations. And yes, for sure, the ones who are watching now, please make your questions here on the chat or use it on Twitter, like #bottish. And yeah, I think I start with introducing, or like I want to give the word to Stefan, shortly introducing himself because he is new in this round. So Stefan.
Hi, everybody. My name's Stefan. I'm also the founder of Chatbots Life. We're the second most popular publication in the world on chatbots. And when we're not writing articles, we're helping companies make more money using AI and chatbots internally and externally. And then we also create some products. We recently created a product called Go Beyond, which automatically turns your Shopify store into a chatbot. And then we're also working with Seed community in the blockchain space and a lot of other projects. So I'm very excited to be here, and yeah, I look forward to this.
Okay, so yes, I want to address the first question, if it's okay for you, Stefan, because we had someone asking in the session of Aaron, but I believe this is relevant for all. She asked, like, the FAMGA, like Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Apple, they are dominating, like not only data-wise, but they're making a lot of acquisitions of AI companies. So what do you think about this movement? Because we were talking about like open source, or giving the power back to the users, or even giving back to companies. So Aaron, I want to having your first impression about this, because it was in your session.
Right. Yeah. So well, firstly, it's a real thing. I mean, I agree that it's happening. It's not just a fear that people have. These companies are very, very big, very, very powerful, and they're growing. Do we want to stop that? Well, you can just sit still and wait what happens, and you still get a nice Alexa in your home, and it will serve you whatever you want from Amazon. We can do something. So yeah, some of the things that we are doing is, of course, investing and helping with growing alternatives for that. I think. Let's say, I think not all is lost. Otherwise, I would apply for a job at Amazon or one of the others. I'm not there, but I think there are genuine advantages of different ways and of doing these things in a more open and decentralized manner. Also, without dismissing the real use and the real value that these companies bring. Because I mean, it's not that Facebook is not useful, or that Amazon Alexa is not useful. There's just there's, I think, better ways to organize this and to prevent the situation arising that companies get too much power. Because in the end, that's also not what they want. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg doesn't want to spend his afternoon in Congress answering questions. He wants to spend his time, building useful services for people. So even from those companies' perspectives, there's benefit in having sort of this unsiloed way of dealing with data, dealing with AI, yet still having a business model, making a good profit for everybody in the company, etc.
Okay. Other views, for example, another big brand, Romeo, IBM. What do you say about this?
Okay, I can answer that as IBM and as Romeo. So let me first start with the IBM answer. We have a clear strategy in not storing data and not using data from our clients. So we stated on our webpage, so that distinguishes us from all the other cloud companies. You can even, when calling one of our AI services, there's a parameter which enables, which deactivates logging any data which comes from the REST call. So we even don't put the client's data to any logs. So that's something important. On the other hand, I think we have a prisoner's dilemma, because we as humanity, we don't benefit if all the data gets concentrated among 5 vendors. But as an individual, we are benefiting from their services. And if we want to prevent that, we have to use open source services, which are not as powerful at the moment. And as Aaron said, the only solution to that problem is to provide open source based services which are at least as powerful. And I think big brains already have recognized that. So a lot of big AI brains, for example, left Google and started their own thing, because they want, they realize that AI is such a powerful, great thing that they don't want to keep it with Google only. They are open sourcing it and working for the community. And that is actually raising hope in myself that the prisoner's dilemma is not screwing up ourselves.
Robert, what are your thoughts? Because you have been working some big brands as well before you joined Seed. So I believe, or you mentioned something in your presentation why you joined Seed.
Well, so I think, you know, I've been around a long time. I've been doing this for 30 years, and one of the things you see if you live long enough and you actually engineer during that whole period, you see there's this general thing where there's expansion and contraction. The industry cycles, right? And at some point we say, oh, you know, these big companies are doing great, and Google in some sense has been growing on that sentiment, like, oh, look how well everything works well together and all this stuff, right? And then at some point you hit a point where it's like, okay, now we have too much centralization. Now we need to do more distribution and more sharing. And so there's a natural cycle that happens in the industry. And that being said, you know, big companies have the problems of turning a battleship, which is small companies can actually often do better innovation and can move things and find partners and things. They can just move faster. So there are going to be places where big companies are going to have the advantage because of the finances and because of the momentum and the, you know, various things like that. But at the same time, small companies also are very good. A lot of times, Google, for a long time, when I was at Google, 2004, they used to try to run Google like different teams were in fact like a well-funded startup within Google. And they got a lot of the Google infrastructure, but without a lot of the Google process. You know, and that was the way to try to run things, because if you didn't run things like that, some of those teams would just break out, leave Google, and be a and leave Google. So Google had to try to find a way to make that work. So even big companies are trying to figure out how they can look and act like small companies and act like startups so they can get the benefits. So, you know, there's no question that we are in a position in time where we want less centralization, we want more distribution, we have less trust than we used to in the past. So, so things are moving in a direction where we need many small entities out there as well. There's always going to be big players. It's never going to change. The question is how many. You always are going to have big players. The question is how many small players are you going to have over time? And that, like I said, that goes through a cycle. So.
Okay, so Stefan, what do you want to add? Any comments or questions for our experts here?
Yeah. Do you think that Robert? Do you think a distributed network could be one of those really, really big players?
Say it again. What do you mean by that?
So, for example, C token is obviously like open source. It's kind of like a distributed network in a way.
Absolutely. Yeah, no question.
Right. How close are we essentially to being competitive to a Google or a Facebook or something like that? Or when I mean we, but any distributed network that's looking for that sort of level.
So I think it's a different thing. So we will in fact be a customer of some of the big players. So you can imagine Seed Vault will in fact, you know, sort of bulk buy services from all the various big AI vendors that have the big hardware and have access. We bulk buy it and then make it available to our developers, you know, as small, you know, a customer of the big players. But at the same time, small companies often better serve other small companies. So rather than have somebody wants something done and they say, oh, we need a website done. Well, let's go talk to Google. That's not going to happen, right? You don't go to, a small company doesn't go to Google to get their website built, even though Google can clearly do that, right? So the idea is that a lot of times, part of the reason small companies do well is that they can actually work better and work fast and are at the same pace, if you will, of other sort of small companies. And so there's like a network effect, but that network effect really is much more at the small company level. And so our whole goal is to develop a company, a community, and an economy that outlives us, right? And that it takes on a life of its own. And I think it would be foolish for us to try to speculate where it's going to go. But we want to basically, germinate this idea and have everything be available and open and have there be a lot of collaborative opportunity so that as ideas or partnering or whatever show up, people can actually move in that direction, as opposed to let's try to convince a big player to change the way they do business to support this new model. So that makes sense?
Yeah, totally. I know I'm a strong believer that decentralization is the future, but I think it could only, I think it could only happen because there's some sort of fundamental value that gives more back as a whole than centralization. So the reason why we've had centralization up to this point, because it was needed, and now that through blockchain and other technologies, we're becoming more and more decentralized. There's so much advantages in decentralization. I think some of it is, are we far enough yet in terms of those advantages, where decentralization could catch up to centralization and then one day overtake it as sort of a new model?
I don't know that I ever would think would be overtaking, because I think you're always going to have big entities, and you're always going to need big entities for certain things, right? I mean, I remember one time somebody said to me that big companies, if you're going to do a contract with the government, you have to have the same number of levels, in a sense, that the government has, because everybody wants to have their peer, at their partner company or whatever, right? And so big companies are always going to be valuable, and they're always going to be around. But but I think a lot of the innovation is going to come from us and from the small companies. But in fact, we will be customers and in some ways partners of the bigger companies. But we're all well aware of what happens when Wells Fargo or Facebook or one of these companies does things, data and things like that. So part of our model is take back control of your data, take back control of your life. And that value, and there's value there, but that value is actually hard to quantify, because what is the value? What is the financial value of that? We don't really know. But we do know that we can actually allow people to say, my data is mine, and I will share it with you for a fee. I'll share it with you for a discount. I will share it with you if you show me yours, I'll show you mine, right? We can come up with much more complicated models, so it's not just we're sucking down all your data and screw you, we'll do what we want with it. Now you can be much more, and with things like smart contracts and stuff, you can actually make what they can do with the data conditional, right? They're only allowed to use the data during certain times of the day. They're only allowed the data to do certain things. If they use your data and the gross profit of such an activity exceeds a certain amount, you get a kickback, whatever, right? There's lots of ways. And that suddenly puts you in a position where you actually have control over your data, which does not exist today.
If I want to ask Aaron, because I believe you have definitely like an opinion about the value, because otherwise you wouldn't invest in such companies like having data, or not.
That's true. Well, I mean, with regard to decentralized networks overtaking the big companies, the Facebooks, Amazons, etc. You can look at it in different ways. Are they overtaking them in terms of the services that they can offer, the profits that they can make? Well, usually a decentralized network doesn't make a profit, because on its own, it's just a thing, and the people who use it can make a profit using the services that they use. In valuation, however, some decentralized networks have already come quite close. You can say about that whatever you want, but the valuation of all the Ethereum tokens has, I think, reached near 100 billion. and you can say what that means, whether a market cap of a crypto token is even a sensible measure. But these things are getting quite big in any case. Now, can they compete with them? Can the centralized network compete with centralized networks? Well, there's always an efficiency benefit in centralization. So you can almost all the things that are being done in a decentralized manner, you could always do faster and cheaper in a centralized manner. But there are things that are just not possible in that centralized way. And so in that sense, there's sort of a new domain being created that can, by definition, not be dealt with by the centralized companies. So trying to build and do the same thing, the exact same things as those centralized companies are now doing in a decentralized manner, I think is also not the way. Because you're not going to win. You can do interesting stuff. You can, sort of show like, hey, we can do this in a totally decentralized manner. Yay. But you can add things, and that's where it becomes interesting, like these control over your data and monetizing it, etc. You can do much more with that in an open network than you can in the Facebook model or the likes. So it's more competing in terms of offering different ways than offering the same thing better or cheaper, etc.
Right.
Yeah, totally agree.
Romeo, any thoughts on these comments? Or like, yes, I believe it's complicated to give like an IBM point of view, but in your personal experience, I imagine you have a lot of projects, customers you're talking to, exactly like talking about blockchain or initiatives or centralizing, decentralizing. What can you share about this?
Okay, so maybe I can share about a couple of things. The first thing is about working with startups and partners. So as IBM has this open source strategy, we realized that we are relying on partners. So a lot of innovation is happening inside IBM, of course. We have the largest research organization on the planet. But in addition, we are a big company and not as agile as a 5-man startup in Silicon Valley. And one example I can give you here is the Coursera course we have created on AI is in partnership with SkyMind, which is a Silicon Valley startup. And we, for example, got here one of the key contributors to the Keras framework as a teacher. And it was a pretty easy process. I met this guy at the conference, and we shared email addresses, and we talked about it. And a week later, we have been recording videos together. On the decentralization aspect, I'm really hopeful. That's maybe my personal opinion, that decentralization will help humanity and take power away from central organizations like large corporate banks and IT vendors. I think startups will be clients of the big corporates, but it should be services which are commodity, so that it doesn't matter where I'm buying in my Kubernetes resources. If it's from Google, IBM, Microsoft, I don't really care. And the actual intellectual property and the value add will be generated by individuals. And that's the cool thing. Every individual can basically come up with an idea, implement something, and make it as big as an IBM or Google or Microsoft data center. And I think that will change the world now. So power to the people.
Power to the people. I'd like to hear an IBMer say power to the people. That's awesome.
Yeah, the new IBM. We are open and we are cool and friendly.
When I was at IBM, they used to have a thing called a think pad, and it was an actual pad of paper that said think on it. That was the original think pad, 1985.
I think we still have it. I can search for
Do
one.
you really?
Yeah, Stefan, you have any thoughts? Or because we have one question from someone, Carlo. He said like I can show it here on the stream. I don't know if anyone can respond to it, but he says like some say chatbots are dead. Do you agree?
Do I agree? I think we jumped up on the hype cycle. Wait, hold on. I'm trying to do the hand things, but it won't show. Okay, so
Weird, yeah.
yeah, basically we went through a hype cycle, and people had these elevated expectations that you know, they were going to be talking to Jarvis or Her from the movie Her, and then they ended up doing things like going to the CNN bot and trying to order pizza. You know, which you would never do. You would never, like, in real life call CNN and say, hey, can I get like a large pepperoni? But they did that with the bot. And then the bot didn't know what pizza was, which you know, didn't get what they were expecting. So at the end, what's happened is a couple of things. One is that user expectations were very high, and they weren't met. And then also the quality of the bots in the very beginning was pretty low. Like simple things, like a lot of bots didn't, you know, weren't able to respond to the 20 most common questions. Hi, how are you? A lot of bots weren't even responding to things like that, especially on Messenger. So what that led to is, you know, going from the top of the hype cycle to kind of hitting a low, reaching this area of disillusionment. And right now we're coming out of that disillusionment, and we're starting to see, I would say, at least 3 or 4 use cases where bots are adding a pretty good amount of value to businesses, and where businesses are starting to adopt them. I'd say the first use case would be marketing, kind of as a lead generation tool. You can think of it as kind of the way marketers capture emails on websites. The same way now they're sending it to their bot. The reason is because bots have higher open rates, higher click-through rates, which will eventually result to higher sales rates. Customer service is a pretty common use case. And I think the most exciting use case is the one that no one knows about or talks about. And that is companies using bots in the back end. You'll never hear about it because they don't talk about it. A good example is Chase. They had a bot called Coin, which uses NLP, and all it does is it just reads contracts, legal contracts, and it compares the contract to a template. It looks for errors, both spelling and you know, other types. And in their first year, Chase was able to save 360,000 hours of legal work. So lawyers didn't have to, you know, save 360,000 hours. So I think we're going to see a lot more of those sort of bots that kind of act as like a middle layer for companies, as a way for especially younger employees to engage with enterprise software that's way outdated. That was lengthy, I know.
Okay, yes, and we have another question. I think Tao, she joined us later because she asks now Facebook, Amazon, and Google dominate our data. How to solve this? Yeah, I think we were talking already about this. You know, yes, I can say like the same. I'm using like Gmail or whatever services, or even Google Maps. You know, because they're easy to use. You know, but at the end, yes, are there, because there are not easy alternatives for myself. I can speak now for myself. Yes, how can we dominate this? Yes, perhaps we need to have one day other solutions which are open source, decentralized, which are equal, you know, and that easy to use as well. But as you all said, it takes time, in my opinion as well. We are at the starting point. Or what do you think?
I think the biggest challenge is mind estate, because if you look at any industry by and large that's consumer facing, what you'll see is that 2 or 3 players dominate, like they own the majority of the market share. I think Google has like a 70 or 80% market share, and then it's Baidu and, you know, Bing. But any other search engine like almost doesn't even get used. That's the case for technology, even more so. It's more of a winner take all. Even in traditional verticals like, say, pop, Coca-Cola and Pepsi own the majority of the market share, right? And the reason at the end of the day is, and we can go down the list, toothpaste, like, even if you think about, if you ask people, like, think of a toothpaste, most people will either say Crest or Colgate. Like, Colgate was the first toothpaste company, Crest was like the second or third, right? So in essence, it's really like a competition to get mind share. And once you have that mind share and people know that, hey, I have this problem and I'm going to use this solution, it becomes like it's a trigger. It's almost like an automatic behavior that I use Google to search, right? So I think the question is like, how can a third person come in or a third party come in and capture mind share?
Okay, yes, I think we are all working on this, you know, talking from IBM, Seed, or even like Outlier, investing in these companies which are working on this. So I think, yes, looking at the time, so the meetups, they want to have their drinks anyway, and we are going to close. So any closing statements from your side? And if not, then I will make then the official closing. How about you?
Yeah. Sure. We're having a conference in September in San Francisco. It's called the Chatbot Conference. Would be great for everyone to come. Go to chatbotconference.com. And then we're going to have presenters from Seed, and then also a lot of the big companies like IBM. Watson is going to be there, Microsoft, and so on.
Okay, cool. Yeah, great. Thanks for this. So.
All right, thank you. And if anyone wants to learn more about Outlier Ventures, you can find us at outlierventures.io or join our Telegram and interact with us, learn about what we're doing. Subscribe to our newsletter. You'll be flooded with interesting information.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, Romeo, last word.
Yeah, just advocate, everybody. Don't share your data. Use encrypted messengers like Tox and Signal, encrypt your emails, use OpenStreetMaps, and so on, and buy a Fairphone too, and put the open source Android version out on it, and just prevent the humanity from collapsing because of that.
Excellent.
Robert, so you are going back to work now, no?
Yeah. I'm at work actually. Yeah. So
yeah.
So I guess what I want to say is, check out our GitHub repo. Microsoft just bought GitHub. But yeah, go check out our GitHub repo. It's Seed Vault, and look at .bot, AdFlow, Actor. Look at the things that we're putting out there with regard to standards. Contribute, comment, give us your feedback. If you have better ideas, and I'm sure many of you do, please bring them. Let's start that forum. Let's get these open standards conversations started and moving along, because this is really key to us as an industry succeeding. We need to do this, and we'd like to do our part. So please come visit.
Okay, so let me now make the closing, because we are now having like an outlook. You see, bottish number 9, we're having a short break meaning like summertime. We're having some preparation. So we will be back with the 9th edition, October 25th, starting again like 6 p.m. Central European time. And yeah, more than happy if you would like to join us as a speaker, as a meetup, or participants for sure as well. And as we just published today, by the way, we are having members from 95 countries already. So it would be great having by October hitting the 100 countries. So yes, that's it from us. So thanks all for watching, and wishing you a great time. And we will send the replays starting next week with all the presentations, with all the videos. And yeah, stay curious and get bottish and have a great time. So thanks you all,
right.
And talk to you soon again.
All right. Thanks, Thomas, and thanks everyone at Bottish for organizing.
Thanks. Okay, bye guys. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Tom.